This might just be the best combination of crazy and hilarious that we might have seen in the entire world of NHL conversations. Today we're going over to the Basu and Godin notebook, published by SDPN, because on a recent episode earlier this week, the folks on the show, of course we recognize them, Marc-Antoine Godin and Arpon Basu, these are two Montreal Canadiens insiders and writers, they had a really interesting conversation, and I wanted to go out there and bring this up here on the YouTube channel, because the clip that we're going to be referring to in this video is going to be linked in the description, and it goes over the Montreal Canadiens, and whether or not they could pull off the infamous contract signing once again. The offer sheet. This video did not pop off anywhere. It only has 2,000 views, 0 replies, 1 retweet, and 8 likes. But I stumbled upon this because SDPN, comes across on my feed once in a while, and once I heard about this idea, I was like, yeah, we have to make a video about that. We absolutely do. The caption of the video reads this: "Wouldn't it just be a little bit funny if the Montreal Canadiens tried to offer sheet Quinton Byfield?" And in the video, which is about a minute long, you have Basu and Godin talking about this very same idea, and they bring up some hilarious points. Now, we'll incorporate these points into the commentary as it goes along. We'll talk about why the Canadiens may want to do this, why the possibility is even being discussed, and what value these two see in talking about it on their show. But to get everything started, Quinton Byfield is our subject. 21 years old, 6'5", 216-pound left-handed guy, signed till the end of this season on his ELC. He's a big guy, he's a strong guy, and he's a point-producing guy too, with 53 points in 74 games played this year. He's on pace for about 58 points on the season, and he has had himself a very good year. It's been filled with a few ups and downs, a few cold stretches here and there, and a few point streaks, but Quinton Byfield, as a guy who is only 21 years old, turning 22 in August, is one of these unicorns. Just an extraordinarily unique combination of skills, physical tools, and an absolute swagger in the way he carries himself on the ice. Like, you see some of the goals that Quinton Byfield scores, he can make some highlight reel plays, and he can put himself in really great positions to succeed. For a guy like this, who is so young and so big and so raw, the sky really is the limit here for Quinton Byfield, and I've been one of the many people who has believed that through and through ever since he was drafted in the 2020 NHL Draft 2nd overall by LA. But, as we have just discussed, Quinton Byfield has his contract expiring, and Basu and Godin go out there and discuss the idea of a Montreal Canadiens offer sheet. They go out there and say at the beginning of the video that Quinton Byfield could realistically get something from the LA Kings in the $8.5 million range. Because, hey, if they go all the way with this guy, sign him from 22 years old up until 30 years old, there's no telling how good Quinton Byfield is going to become. We always knew that this would be a lot more of a project than the other 2020 guys. Lucas Raymond and Tim Stützle may be better NHL players in the short term. Alexis Lafreniere too. But Quinton Byfield had one of the highest ceilings in the entire draft because of his size, his skills, his point production, the way he reads the game, and how he's able to respond to on-ice situations. He is an explosive player, and there's no telling what he could be capable of in an 8-year span, where he's making $8.5 million a year. If you wanted to compare this to somebody else who made that same amount of money out of their ELC, hey, Leon Draisaitl is the main guy who was on an $8.5 million contract. He's still on it, and that is expiring in a few seasons. He has been underpaid this entire time because he was a 100-point, 50-goal scoring, Art Ross winning, MVP awarded player in that time frame. Now, for Quinton Byfield, the folks on SDPN do say that because Byfield could reasonably get something in the $8.5 million range from the LA Kings, in order to get him out of LA, you would need to push the boundaries to an extent so far and beyond that the LA Kings may not be able to match it. Not necessarily because they wouldn't want to, but because it's a bit out of their range. They labeled 9.5 as a potential offer sheet range for Byfield, because you gotta remember, The only reason an offer sheet goes through ever is because the player has to sign it. You can offer contracts to RFAs all you want, but if they don't sign it, then it's not an offer sheet. Like, it doesn't go through. You can make the offer for an offer sheet, but if the player doesn't sign, hey, it's not an offer sheet, it doesn't exist. So for the Montreal Canadiens, with a boatload of cap space heading into this upcoming off-season, you want to talk about the Habs and their space. They've got about, what is that, $9 million in salary cap space for next year, which isn't too bad considering the only guys they're going to have to re-sign are Tanner Pearson, whom they're probably not going to do that. Jesse Alonen, Colin White, Arbor Xhekaj is going to make a bunch of money, but we'll see where exactly they go with that. There still is $10.5 million of Carey Price's LTIR money too, so you kind of have to take that into consideration as well. Long story short, the cap space is going to be there if the Canadiens wanted to shell out some sort of a $9.5 million offer sheet. But what makes this so funny to me is what Basu and Godin say afterwards. They bring up an idea saying this: how precious would it be if the LA Kings could not match an offer sheet for Quinton Byfield because they have Pierre-Luc Dubois on the books at $8.5 million a year? Basu and Godin say if it's an $8.5 million offer sheet, the Kings probably match it. So you have to go above and beyond to a range where the LA Kings would have a very difficult time matching, and 9.5 maybe is that number. And it would be crazy because they would be prevented from matching because of PLD, the guy who has been connected to Montreal for years, whom we've made videos about with the Habs for years. And now, his $8.5 million AAV contract is the thing of legends when you talk about unfortunate contracts in the National Hockey League. The guy got paid, and now what? He's not nearly as good as he was in Winnipeg. And the LA Kings, they're overpaying for a guy that you could say they overpaid to trade for back in the day. If that money holds them back from being able to execute some very meaningful transactions, whether that's matching an offer sheet or re-signing guys to a proper amount of money for players that should be able to carry this team into the long-term future like Quinton Byfield, then that'd be nuts. Now, let's go out there and talk about the idea of Byfield in Montreal because, you know, they talked about it on the show. Quinton Byfield, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you're free to disagree, has the potential to become, let's say, a 90 to 100 point franchise-defining centerman. I've always felt this, even going back to the videos we made in 2018, 2019, 2020 about Quinton Byfield and the unicorn-like profile that he possessed. Not only was he a phenomenal hockey player, but he was one of the youngest players in that draft season. He had all these intangibles. There was a conversation going around saying that if he wanted, like, that Evgeny Malkin type player, big guy, very fancy, who doesn't really play like a huge power forward, but who can dangle the pants off of you and make some great plays, Malkin was kind of a template for what Quinton Byfield could have been seen as in the eyes of some scouts and analysts. But of course, Byfield was a bit bigger, and you could debate that he was a bit more, I'm going to use the word spinny, because that was a really particular part about Byfield's game that separated itself from other prospects in that draft class. Yeah, he uses his edges a lot. He's kind of like a ballerina out there, except he's 6'5" and a big, strong dude. So, pretty different, I would say. If the Montreal Canadiens are able to get this guy as their number one center in the future, whilst Nick Suzuki is able to marinate and do his thing against second-line matchup opponents, then, hey, the Canadiens can be pretty good. And you want to talk about big centers that can dangle the pants off of you and make some good passes, having Doc and Byfield playing together, that sounds like a really good move. I don't know about you. Have Doc, Byfield, and Slafkovsky. Nobody is getting past that line. You talk about the... what are they called here in Vancouver? The Twin Towers pairing of Zadorov and Myers? Yeah, you could have a triplets tower. Yeah, that's the right word, right? Triplets tower pairing. Line, of Doc, Slafkovsky, Byfield. That would be unstoppable. If, of course, everybody is healthy and they progress in the ways that we think they could. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the crazy idea brought up on SDPN by Arpon Basu and Marc-Antoine Godin as to whether or not the Canadiens could offer sheet Quinton Byfield of the Los Angeles Kings. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.